So thanks, Gerber, but please stay with us for the panel discussion. And we are now entering into the last part of the conversation, because I will kindly ask to come on stage our speakers, the other speakers for today's session. So Pablo, Renata, and Michele. But before leaving you the floor for a comment for your take on the Net Zero Industry Act, I would like to bring some other elements to the discussion. We saw in the first slide that indeed there is a strong competition in the clean energy technologies. The IEA report on the state of clean technology manufacturing of last year really highlighted that there is a massive growth of renewables in the last few years, and the world's total renewable power capacity is expected to surge for the rest of the decade at a magnitude that is roughly equal to the current total power capacity of China, the EU, India, and the United States all together. So we are expecting really an incredible rate of growth of these clean energy technologies. But as you said, Daniel, there is a regional concentration in the manufacturing for a number of clean energy technologies, and namely the electrolyzer, the PV, the windy heat pumps, onshore and offshore wind. In some of those technology areas, Europe still has a lead, but in other technology areas, China is a strong competitor, and it is expected to continue to account for the majority of the manufacturing capacity, in particular for wind, batteries, and PV. And also the Draghi report that was issued in September, so early September, states that EU recognized that the EU is a world leader in the clean energy technologies, but it is not guaranteed that Europe will seize the opportunity of this massive growth, which is expected in very next few years. So in this landscape where competition is really strong, and I would say not only with China, but also Asian countries, the United States as well, I would ask to all of the panelists, is the Net Zero Industry Act bold and strong enough to ensure that the EU gains and maintains a competitive edge on the manufacturing of clean energy technologies? I would maybe start asking DG Ener, who was the co-lead in this exercise of bringing to us the Net Zero Industry Act. Pablo, what's your take from the point of view of DG Ener?
Thank you, Rachele, for the question and for the overview. And of course, as you can imagine, I'll try not to repeat what my colleague Daniel said, but it's challenging since he gave a very good overview of the Act and of all the elements of the Act. And I think I would like to start by that. Of course, when we consider NZIA, one first thing that we have to acknowledge is the comprehensive approach of the Act. Comprehensive in terms of technologies, comprehensive in terms of supply chain, and comprehensive in terms of the actions proposed by the Act and put forward by the Act. Daniel mentioned permitting, access to markets, skills, innovation. All of this is covered under the Net Zero Industry Act. And then we have the next step, which is the implementation. I think here, in particular with the Net Zero Industry Act, given its complexity, but also to the extent that it's really a game changer. It's a first time regulation suggested in its form by the European Union. Implementation will be crucial. And implementation, as Daniel mentioned here, it's currently ongoing. It will be ongoing over the next months and years, because it needs to be done properly with the member state authorities, but also across all the sectors and with all the stakeholders. So to ensure, I think that we're only now understanding to what extent the strength of NZIA and to what extent it can really change the sector through a good and proper implementation. Then, of course, I don't think here I can also be transparent. I don't think NZIA is the last step and that everything will be solved by NZIA. You're right, Rachele. There are still challenges. The challenge we're facing is huge, and NZIA will be a first good step on which we may have to build on it. As you may have all seen, our president in her political guidelines has put forward already ideas for next step, notably through the Clean Industrial Deal and the Industrial Decarbonization Accelerator Act. So is NZIA enough to be seen? But it's definitely a very good step on which we can build to strengthen the competitiveness of the clean energy sector.
Thank you, Pablo. Of course, we are at the beginning, but there are, let's say, it's a very important step to build upon in order to accelerate the manufacturing of the clean energy technologies. And but I would ask Renata, because Renata is working on a very key sector, which is fuel cells and hydrogen, and electrolyzer are one of the technology areas where we have a competitive asset there. So from the clean energy, from the Clean Hydrogen Partnership, what is your point of view on the net zero industrial? Will this support the development of the hydrogen economy?
Thank you. Just to start to explain maybe to the audience who is not aware of, the Clean Hydrogen Partnership is a public-private partnership between the European Commission, European hydrogen industry, and the European hydrogen research associations. So I think that we are in a perfect place to in a way see how these all developments come together in this very important regulation. And I have to agree, we see it just as a start, and we expect a lot from this regulation. What we are especially happy with is that the regulation emphasizes the most critical issues that the hydrogen industry is facing, which is of course regulation, which is financing for the project, skills, and of course trade in terms of the critical materials needed for the production. So yes, I have to agree that it is an important document, but just a start, and we are very much looking forward to the whole deployment of this regulation.
Is there anything in particular that would impact the sector? Because the hydrogen, we are at the very beginning of a mass production capacity.
Well, it depends. Some regions are more advanced than the others. We are working very closely with the European region, so we know that some are quite advanced, some are just starting. But what is especially relevant for us, I mean, we are getting a lot of feedback from our projects that the regulation is really an important issue, that this whole granting, permitting procedures take too long, and I mean, there are some national laws which don't even have comparable procedures for the clean technologies. And of course, financing. I have to say that since I started to work in the field 10 years ago, the financing there is financing for the projects. What is a bit critical for us is that this financing comes from various sources and funding instruments, and for a big hydrogen production and use projects, we need to finance these projects from the different sources, which have different rules, different funding rates, different timelines. So this can be quite complicated. I think that we need to do more in terms of combination of different funding sources and instruments.
Okay, so streamline the regulatory framework is not enough. We also need to streamline the funding framework.
Yes, of course.
To support these technologies to step up. But funding or financing a new endeavor is not an issue, has not been an issue for the three sons. Is it so, Michele? I saw a post in your LinkedIn profile where you were welcoming the Net Zero Industry Act because you say that you are starting the mass production in Catania, and this demonstrates that Italy and Europe are capable of making technology innovation and transforming it into large-scale production, and that the fast adoption of the Net Zero Industry Act is really the way forward. So, but you already started before the Net Zero Industry Act. Was it difficult? Would this have changed?
Let me say, we started before the investment, not really the commercialization. So we are really at the right moment for Net Zero Industry Act. I think this is a fundamental step for our development because it creates the market for our product. Let me say that as of today, I think Daniel mentioned, and thank you, Daniel, for the very clear introduction, that as of today, you need auctions to energy investments because the energy market is not giving guarantees in terms of prices and long-term view. So we are doing auctions to create basically energy projects. But these auctions as of today are basically subsidizing non-EU manufacturing. So we need to act, and Net Zero Industry Act is a very clear and strong level, let me say, action to improve this industry phenomenon that is happening. So what we need is just to be rapid. I think Daniel showed in his presentation April 2026. Now, the first auction that will come out with Net Zero Industry Act rules will be April 2026. We are still 2024. I think this is an issue. This is the clear issue that we see upcoming because now the industry is really exploding. A lot of projects, I'm talking about PV, a lot of projects are coming out, a lot of investment are being done. But if we wait until April 2026 to see the first Net Zero Industry Act indication coming out, we lost 1.5 years and maybe more. So velocity, speed is the fundamental step. When you talk about emergency regulation, do we like it? The answer is emergency regulation always gives a feeling of being temporary, of being something that you do for a temporary moment. This is not what the industry needs. The industry needs stable, clear, possibly simple, and certain long-term regulatory framework. And this is exactly what ENZIA is doing, but we need to speed up. I think this is the major issue about the industry in this moment. And this is the major issue for Trisan as well. Because as you said, we came out and we did a factory, we produced the panels, but now we need to commercialize them. We need to have a market. And as you know, as a very fresh grass, you need to protect it, you need to be helped, you need to give extra water, you need to make sure that you give it the time to become mature and be ready to compete with the rest of the world. And I think for us, waiting for 2 years, it's a very long term.
Daniel, this is an important push to the EU. So what are the next steps? What are you thinking about? I mean, it is preliminary. We have the new commission. We are waiting for the new commission to be in place, but I believe that some tracks are already there.
Yeah, first just to react to Michele's points, which were all excellent and very important. But on one point, I do have to quickly intervene and say that the first auctions on net zero will be January 2026, which is not 2 years away, but 1 year and 1 month and 8 days. So that's not 2 years, that's in a year. That's a big difference. And I think 3Sun is such an important project for us in the EU because they show that we can do solar in the EU, we can do it really well. But of course, we bet also on other players coming online. And this is something that we monitor via an industrial alliance, the Solar PV Industrial Alliance. And we see that there are important projects that can come online in that time frame. So this is just to keep in mind that the time frame, indeed, things should go quicker, but it will also fit with projects that still have to be built or still have to find the financing. I think that what you just mentioned, what is the future? A lot of it is about cost competitiveness. In terms of EU funding and financing, the EU provides a lot of instruments, a lot of funding. However, the situation is such that with the current energy prices and the fact that other world regions either heavily subsidize their industries or offer tax regimes that we cannot do at EU level currently, is that in Europe it is currently still more expensive to produce. And this is something that we will have to tackle, that we would like to tackle in these next 5 years. It's crucial to create a level playing field, is to bring down the cost in the EU. And I think the Draghi report alludes to several of these points. And this is something on which at the moment we cannot say too much because we are preparing for the coming commission. But the fact, as Pablo mentioned earlier, that this new commission will be even more focused on strategic autonomy, where there will be an executive vice president in this structure focusing on this topic, it's a reassuring element that things will further build on what we have created now with the Net Zero Industry Act.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel. We know the discussion about the technology sovereignty and the strategic autonomy is a recent one. Of course, we need to build the building blocks. For this, the Net Zero Industry Act is one of the pillars, and other pillars will come for sure in the next future, as you were saying. And we will be there to discuss and to dive deeper in that. But I would like to continue this conversation because we talked of funding and investment. And I would like to ask Pablo, indeed, the Net Zero Industry Act is a very key pillar in terms of regulatory framework because it provides a fast track for these strategic clean tech projects. But what about the investments? Indeed, providing certainty for the investment decision is key, but it is enough to lever private investment at the magnitude and at the pace we need on the short to medium term to achieve our targets to 2030?
Yes, thank you, Rachele, for the question. And indeed, the funding financing is always an important aspect and something that from our side we are carefully looking at always, I would say. You mentioned investor uncertainty, and I think that's, something important that NZIA brings, in particular with the clear permitting timelines. This allows for an increased investor certainty, and I would say it can leverage private investment. That's not the only thing NZIA does on financing, since through notably the Net Zero Europe platform, there is a whole dimension of coordination on financing, and notably for strategic projects, support for strategic project promoters to have and get private financing, but also support, for example, in relationship with the EIB. On this, I'm sure Daniel can also provide further information. He's the lead in the commission on the strategic projects. And then NZIA happens, I would say, in a myriad of other actions, notably STEP, the Strategic Technologies for Europe platform, which not only provides, I would say, a highlight, a focus on specific projects, but also promotes them in order to get further financing. So again, I think here what's important is that we from our side, the European Commission, work alongside the stakeholders to really exploit all the opportunities that are brought forward by the existing framework within ZIA, with STEP, and with other well-known initiatives to make sure that all the opportunities that are provided are used by the stakeholders. And then again, I mean, there's no need to paint a perfect picture. There will most probably be the need to do more. And I think the unlocking of financing has been a crucial element for the next commission. It has been announced as such by President von der Leyen, notably through leveraging the use of public funding, and that's a crucial element, with the announcement in particular of the competitiveness fund in the political guidelines of President von der Leyen, and then through other means, such as a relationship with the EIB, de-risking to make sure that private funding is more and more used, and public-private partnerships. So a lot of elements on which to build and on which to, I would say, work alongside the stakeholders and the sector to make sure that all of this makes a real change for the industry.
Thank you, Pablo. Indeed, there are a number of funding instruments and important opportunities for the sector. But I would ask maybe the point of view of the clean energy or the clean hydrogen partnership. Sorry, it's too similar, the name. So I will also mix them up. So Renata, hydrogen is the new black. Everyone trusts in hydrogen for the clean energy transition, for a successful clean energy transition, in particular for the decarbonization of the hard-to-abate industrial sectors. But we need to deploy, and to deploy fast, a very substantial capacity in the very short term. And there are investment plans, there are HCIs ongoing, there are the hydrogen valleys, there are the projects that you are supporting and funding. But what else is needed at the EU level to bring those projects which are in the pipeline really into the ground? Is it just a matter of funding, regulatory skills? What is needed indeed to make the clean energy transition happen?
Well, I have to say it's not just related to skills, regulatory financing. These are very important, I would say elements for the sector. Well, what we see from our projects and in the communication with the industry, there are two ways to look at it. First, on the side of production, yes, there are big plans for the hydrogen industry. There is this hydrogen strategy that did put a big, I would say, a number on in terms of the hydrogen produced and also imported. So we see that there is still room for additional research and innovation in the hydrogen production processes. Although everybody thinks that, yes, we have these electrolyzers, electrolysis procedures, they're working, but we see that really need to scale up in terms of the size of the electrolyzers, and this is not so easy. We still need to work on the efficiency. So yes, there needs to be more effort in terms of the funding, in terms of the skilled personnel, and yes, of course, in terms of the deployment, we also need a much faster regulatory processes. Not only in terms of the I would say the hydrogen production facilities, but of course, if you're going to produce renewable hydrogen, we also need solar and wind industry on board, aligned, so that we have a very smooth process. And then on the second hand, we also need to create the market. We also need to look at the demand, because all of these huge amounts of hydrogen, they need to go somewhere. So we very much appreciate that in this regulation, hydrogen is recognized as one of the, I would say, clean energy solutions for the industry sector. But it's not very easy to match supply and demand. And we are also very happy that the regulation mentions the concept of hydrogen valleys, which we have been funding from 2019. And we see this as quite a successful, I would say, instrument to bring on board the industry, the public administration, the users of hydrogen in a joint ecosystem. And this also helps in a way to I would say, foster the regulation, the appropriate regulation development. So this is our view from our experience.
Thank you. Thank you, Renata. Very clear. But in terms of, say, working together and creating an ecosystem, I would like Michele a little bit to tell us about the experience of the Friesland Gigafactory, because this is an example of a joint venture between the EU and the private sector, with the EU that supported research and innovation, and you, the private sector, betting on the feasibility of reshoring the PV manufacturing in Europe. Could this be a blueprint somehow for projects in the same sector, rather clean energy sector?
You have to allow me 1 minute to answer Daniel, because for me this is crucial about the timing. Can I? Just 1 minute it will take, and then I will go on to your question. The 1 minute is just to say that NZA, January 2026, then the countries make the tender, the auctions, 3 months. Then you have 2 months to collect the auctions. Then you have 3 months to select. Then entrepreneurs have 15 months to realize the project. I'm lucky if I sell one of my panels in October 2026, if we don't accelerate. October 2026. And believe me, as Rachel said, Enel and Trisan made a bet. Nobody's going to make a bet. Nobody is going to invest in manufacturing until the rules are clear, until the market is clear on how it works, until the auctions are clear of what the benefit they will give. Nobody's going to invest. So what did Trisan do? Why? And I go to your question, Rachele. Sorry for taking this minute, but for me it's fundamental that this message comes out, because it's crucial for us. It's really crucial. So what did Trisan do? Trisan invested in long time ago, and what is the critical element or the success element is technology. So we decided to invest in a new technology that brings more efficiency and less degradation in time. And this is the crucial fact. We need to compensate some of our, let me call them extra cost of our specific world with greater performance. This is how we can become competitive. And this is the solution we see forward. So technology with more efficiency, less degradation, more performance. Clearly, we have some structural costs which are higher than other countries in the world, and we need to compensate them with technology. But in order to invest in technology, as you just said, we made this. We had some funding, and this is the crucial element of our success, of why we did this, because we managed to go through funding, support funding, and so we invest in technology. And your second part of the question, let me say, what are the three elements that make other players invest? Because Trisan is, I need to have competitors. It's not an healthy environment not to have competitors. So I'm pushing in order to create a framework that will make new competitors come out, because it's very healthy for Trisan. Because if I'm on my own, I have no future. I need to create an industry. So the three elements, I think, and one of them I already mentioned my first, on your first question, is long-term stable regulatory framework. Long-term stable. So in order to invest in manufacture, entrepreneurs, firms need to have a clear view of what will be in 10 years. Not in 1 year, in 10 years. A clear view is fundamental for them in order to make, this is very high capex intensive projects, so they need to have a clear view. The second point is try to support also the value chain involved in producing the panels. in order to gain value from proximity. It cannot only be the factory that produces panels to be helped and to be addressed. We need to have glasses, we need to have frames, we have to have materials. So the whole industry must grow together. Proximity is a real crucial element for the development. And finally, we need to support technological flexibility. We need to give companies the possibility to change during the life the technological, to be supported in order to be able to change technological framework. Because we see we are in a very fast changing world, and so we have to follow the market. We cannot think that we produce something and the market has to take it. We need to follow the market, so be very fast in changing technology and be supported into that.
Thanks a lot, Michele. Very clear, very straightforward, I would say. And I will leave the floor to Daniel for a conclusive remark, a short wrap-up, I would say. I believe that three main issues have raised in the discussion. The first is not only regulatory framework, but also accelerating on market design. The second is not only supporting the supply, but also some demand side measures are needed. And the second is indeed innovation and technology flexibility. So continue investing in research and innovation to keep this competitive edge compared to our competitors. But Daniel, what's your final take out of the discussion?
It was extremely interesting, and myself, I learned new things as well, which is great. And I think that we looked at the discussion from some angles. We didn't talk so much about the skills or the innovation or the net zero acceleration valleys, which are all also very important concepts. And so it's my offer to the stakeholders that are taking part here, to your members, that you can always contact the European Commission if you want to discuss any of these topics in more detail with us. That's what we are here for. And I would also like to say that in terms of the rules, the law, much of it will be finalized by the middle of next year. So these implementing acts on the resilience criteria and so forth. And many member states, many EU countries have also committed in some non-binding documents, but nonetheless, to start applying this resilience thinking earlier, much earlier. So I think what I want to say with this is that both industry, other stakeholders and member states, as well as the Commission, we can push this agenda further by just engaging early, efficiently together. And as Pablo also already mentioned, I referred to it earlier, on the European Commission side, we will continue to build on what we already created. We will focus very much so on making the implementation of the Net Zero Industry Act a success, but at the same time also already prepare for the next steps. This is extremely important because the supply chains on net zero technologies are very much under pressure currently. The graph I showed at the beginning of my presentation with all the red normally has become more red since then in the last 2 years. So it's time for us to step up. And I believe that in this next Commission mandate, in the next 5 years, we will see very important, very interesting developments in this field. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Gerber. Please stay with us for 5 minutes more, because I believe we have some questions from the audience. Julia.
Yes, so we had a question to Michele, but you answered already of how you plan to stay competitive as demand increase for solar panels. So I will go to the other questions because we have quite a bit. So I think this is for the European Commission colleagues. Son, could you elaborate a bit on the links between the Net Zero Industry Act and the Critical Raw Materials Act. As the clean energy transition needs a lot of critical raw materials, how is this addressed?
I know that Pablo is an absolute expert in this area.
I can indeed start, and then Daniel will complement. I mean, as I mentioned, what was put forward by the European Union last year was comprehensive, also in terms of supply chain. So first of all, there's I would say an easy delineation to some extent, which is that where the CRMA ends, NZIA starts. So the whole supply chain is covered by these two acts, from the raw materials until the end product and NZIA, and then the recycling back again in the Critical Raw Materials Act. So from a supply chain perspective, everything is covered. And then for the rest, indeed, the Critical Raw Materials Act, which is led by our colleagues in DG Grow, covers the different raw materials, its mining, but also its early stages processing. So as such, it really aims at making sure that the materials needed for the transition are available to the sector.
Daniel, can you complement? Is there anything to complement, or we pass to another question?
No, the only thing I would say is that for the Critical Raw Materials Act, there's also the strategic projects concept, just like in the Net Zero Industry Act. And for any projects that fit in one or the other part of the value chain, we strongly encourage you to have a look at the Commission website on strategic projects and the application process, all the benefits that come with it. The application processes are open for both regulations, and please have a look. And we will organize webinars for the Net Zero Industry Act tomorrow that will explain how companies can apply to become strategic projects under the Net Zero Industry Act. You can register for those webinars on the Commission website as well. You can you can just Google NZIA strategic project application process, and that's how you will get on the website.
Thanks a lot. This is very important news. Julia, any other questions from the audience?
Yes, we have, how does the NZIA plan to address the potential short-term financial risks associated with the transitioning high emission clients to net zero? And what impact could this have on premium and consumer prices?
This is a very difficult question, very specific.
I see Pablo is smiling, but maybe somebody else in the panel wants to take.
I mean, I can start, and then Daniel will surely complement, and if anyone wants to come in. I hope I got the question correctly. In NZIA, there's, I would say, an important aspect, which is also the introduction of transformative industrial decarbonization projects. The aim of these is to support the conversion of energy-intensive industry to cleaner processes and more decarbonized processes. So what NZIA puts forward on this is, first of all, the easier permitting for that conversion, but also for the creation of new cleaner plants. And as such, the benefits that most of the benefits available in NZIA are also available for this type of new plants. But it's also, I would say, very much a work in progress, also through our colleagues in DG Grow. So on this, yeah, I'm sure Daniel is in a better position to give more information.
If I don't know if I can integrate, because I catch some part of the question regarding competition, and I think there is a very important principle within NZIA regarding the need to also always create competitive framework. And I think this is fundamental because, in fact, if you think about it, we could also have some European manufacturing without extra cost. Because if the market is totally concentrated on one single country, they make the price. If there is a risk of a local production, local manufacturing that is competitive, then they will need to go down with prices. And therefore, they will give the way to low-cost energy. This is, I think, a major principle that we need to always bring in any kind of regulation framework we make in the future. Always be on a competitive basis. I think this is fundamental also for the cost of energy for the big players that are energy intensive.
Thank you. I don't know if there are any other questions, because I would take the chance and to go back to Daniel, because you named the acceleration valleys and we didn't really dive into this important innovation aspect of the Net Zero Industry Act. Since we have 5 minutes left, maybe something more, can you just introduce us to this concept, the acceleration valleys?
Yes, so the concept is called Net Zero Acceleration Valleys. It's in the regulation. It's a concept whereby member states can designate a geographic area in order to foster industrial clustering. So it's an initiative in a piece of law whereby member states can create industrial parks, let's call it that, for the purpose of facilitating investments in net zero technology manufacturing. And what it does is it creates the concept, it obligates the member state to present a very detailed plan with measures of how industrial actors will benefit in such a cluster. It also provides for the co-financing of infrastructure in such clusters via different EU financing instruments. And it also obligates member states to have a single point of contact in such a valley. And again, the single point of contact in the Net Zero Industry Act is not just another one-stop shop, because it has very specific obligations under the Act. Not only is it fully responsible for making sure that the permitting happens on time, it's also there to act as an advisory hub vis-a-vis projects. And this concept of valleys is not new at all. I mean, it's new in that we are going to promote it with member states, but you have industrial clusters, industrial parks everywhere in the European Union. And I would say the most successful ones, the modern ones, are those that have a hub, a one-stop shop that is there to showcase what the benefits are of being located in such an industrial cluster. And this is extremely important because projects nowadays, when they want to build a new factory, they will look at 5, 6 different locations around the world. And from these 5 or 6 different locations, maybe 1 or 2 are located in the European Union. And then it's absolutely crucial that these 1 or 2 locations can compete with the other areas in the world, and that they showcase all the good benefits that they have at home to attract investments into these European regions and clusters.
Okay, sounds a very interesting concept there. I believe that this would require a kind of coordination between the government level and the regional level.
Exactly, and we have currently we have about half a dozen regions in Europe that have showed very strong interest and that are already in the process of preparing plans that they will present to be recognized as such valleys. And it's just to say a last thing, it's a concept that is not fully defined in the regulation, which we will develop further with member states and other stakeholders in the framework of the Net Zero Europe platform, which is this governance body. The first meeting will take place in December. but we are happy to engage with stakeholders on this concept anytime.
Wonderful. Let's stay tuned then. But I believe there are a couple of more questions, 2 more questions from the audience.
Yes, there's one first about international collaboration. So how does the EU plan to ensure that the clean energy innovations from the Net Zero Industry Act are shared and adapted for emerging markets like Kenya, particularly, which have significant renewable energy potential but face financial and technical barriers? What are the mechanisms that are in place to promote international collaboration and technology transfer under this act?
Maybe I can step in.
Super.
Well, I think that if we look at the research and innovation programs, especially Horizon Europe, there are many opportunities for international cooperation. And I can tell from our experience in the Clean Hydrogen Partnership, in many of the projects, we do have international partners from all over the world actively working as observers in these projects because they cannot get EU funding. But they're very much, I would say, appreciative of the knowledge that they are getting from our projects. And specifically on Hydrogen Valleys project, in each of the projects, we also have a part of the project which deals with replication cases, which are usually outside of Europe, and this proved to be quite successful so far for the hydrogen related projects.
Indeed, thanks, Renata. International cooperation will be key in some of the energy sector, in particular hydrogen, because we will need, for example, the radiation capacity of the South Mediterranean countries to produce green hydrogen, for example. So it is important to cooperate and to create, let's say, the knowledge base.
And it's beneficial. It's beneficial both for the EU and for the rest of the world. Yeah.
Perfect. Julia, any other question?
Yes, then a last question. When will dynamic sharing coefficients be included in the EU energy communities framework? Real-time adjustment of energy distribution could optimize self-consumption and grid integration and stability. The market is ready to move beyond fixed coefficient and more coefficient community energy sharing. More efficient, sorry, community energy sharing.
Pablo, I believe this is for you.
Indeed. I don't have a precise date to give you, I would say, starting with this. But you're right that, I mean, the need for flexibility is clearly there. And I think the potential of flexibility is huge. It's huge from a grid management perspective. And it's huge then for the users of the grid. And here I'm talking to end users such as consumers, which are every citizen, but also, and of course, industrial consumers. So there are ongoing discussions, and I would say there's little more I can tell you about how to exploit the potential of flexibility within the energy sector and from a grid's perspective. So this was already put forward before, notably through a digitalization action plan on the energy sector, and it will definitely be built on in the next years.
Thank you, Pablo. I believe that Michele would make a point on this because they are representing one of the main energy players in Europe. So,
well, in reality, this is an example of the Italian market because for flexibility, we just adopted what we call REC, so Energy Communities Regulation, in order to, in some way, support flexibility, because basically it's a flexibility system, an energy community, because you're finding people that consume energy exactly when it's produced. So it's basically a flexibility system. And for example, there we lost a very nice chance to introduce there also the use of EU manufacturing. It could have put together the two things, no? ENZIA and energy communities. And this is the kind of example when I say we could do it from today. We could incentivize this from today because we have the opportunities. We just need to use them all. I don't know if so. This is a mix of flexibility, energy communities, solar panel, EU manufacturing. We need to improve our capability on any action to use the same principle. Thank you. I'm sorry for the add-on.
Thank you, Michele. The energy community is indeed a concept we are working on in the Clean Energy Transition Project to provide the technology solution, of course, also addressing the various barriers to full implementation. But I believe there is one last question before we get to a well-deserved coffee. So, Julia?
Yes, the manufacturing of technologies is a fundamental aspect, but the commercialization of technologies is often associated with complementary services like energy management systems or planning software. These services are usually based on software, not hardware. And will the Net Zero Industry Act support companies that provide only this type of services?
That was a long discussion, isn't so, Daniel? Software is part of the components. Can we consider software as part of the components?
I would say no. A component is a sub part of a final product which is physical. But I know that Pablo is also an expert in the digital realm. And before I pass on to him, just to say on digital, what is crucial in NZIA is that we digitalize the permitting. So as you know, permitting, we've seen these pictures on Twitter where for a wind turbine permitting process, there is 500 kilograms of paper printed out on a desk. This is where we have to move away from if we want to be competitive globally. No more paper. This stuff has to be done digitally and it has to be done much faster. That's just a quick intermezzo on digital permitting. But I know that Pablo knows quite a lot on the digital front in this area.
Yes, I mean, just very quickly, because I see that also time is running, but I think Daniel mentioned it already. So NZIA in itself focuses on the manufacturing of components. So it's a software would be out of scope. Still, all the hardware related to this relates, and there are two categories, notably the electricity grid technologies categories, but also the energy system related energy efficiency technologies, which are two technologies under NZIA that cover this. There's another opportunity under STEP, so the Strategic Technologies for Europe platform, which there covers also digital technologies and in particular the associated services to those digital technologies.
Thank you, Pablo. I believe that our time is up. And I don't know you, I'm starving for a coffee because it was an early start of the morning. I'm not used to, but thanks for being with us. Thanks for the valuable insights in the Net Zero Industry Act. This is a complex act. We are, of course, going to discover it as long as it's going to be implemented. So I will invite you once again, maybe next year to tell us about the achievements of the Net Zero Industry Act and the impacts on the real ground, on the real economy. For the time being, I thank you once again, and I wish you a nice continuation of the day. For our audience, please go take your coffee, but don't get lost. Be back at 11 for the second panel of today, where we are going to deep dive into the link between innovation and the Net Zero Industry Act. Thanks a lot and see you later.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Goodbye. All the best.
Bye-bye. Have a nice day.